Hi folks, how you doing? I'm the Reverend Danny Crosby, a Unitarian minister serving congregations in Altrincham and in Urmston in the northwest of England. I hope you're able to find the love and that you're witnessing the blessings that are there in life in these very difficult times. It's hard, my friends, but we're all in this one together. So I'm offering these devotions as my little bit of hope, if you like, doing what I can, playing my role in being a part of the solution. They are offered as a balm for the heart, the mind, the spirit and the soul. And the title for today's reflection is Self-Reliance, Asking for Help. So I invite us to still ourselves in silence. Let's invite a loving presence to be here amongst us and to awaken from deep, deep within us. I have lit the flame of freedom in this cup of belonging, acceptance and love. May this light illuminate our minds, bring wisdom to our souls and warmth to our hearts. Light to show us the way, wisdom to walk it truly, warmth to enfold our fellow pilgrims with compassion. Amen. A little while ago I was chatting with some friends when one of them asked the group of us about a reference in a book that was familiar to us all. The book is Alcoholics Anonymous, and she asked what a Lone Ranger was. Now it turns out actually she got the reference slightly confused, as the phrase she was referring to was actually lone wolf. There were several responses, and several of the men amongst us who had obviously watched the television series as children began to describe actually who the Lone Ranger was. We totally forgot about the question and went down this other avenue to talk about the Lone Ranger. And it was quite interesting in the conversation that many talked about why he was called the Lone Ranger, citing the reason that he worked alone. But that wasn't true, as somebody pointed out. He did not work alone. And it seems that this friend was quite an expert on the Lone Ranger and explained to us why he became called the Lone Ranger. And it wasn't because he rode alone, but because he was the only surviving member of a group of 6 Texas Rangers who'd been ambushed in a canyon named Bryant's Gap by a gang of outlaws led by Butch Cavendish. He explained that Tonto, a Native American, came across the scene and rescues the surviving ranger and nurses him back to health. The story tells how the Rangers, whose real name was Reed, had saved Tonto's life when they were both boys, and they had formed an eternal bond back then. Tonto had given him the name Kimosabe, meaning trusty scout. The Lone Ranger lived by a strict moral code and went about righting wrongs, but he did not do it alone. That's not why he was called the Lone Ranger. He did so alongside Tonto and, of course, on his trusty horse Silver. Hi-oh, Silver, away! The 3, along with others, helped, and they helped each other and they helped others. No one amongst them was completely self-reliant, although they were all very much responsible. Do you know what? The Lone Ranger even had his own creed that he lived by. And this is the Lone Ranger's creed. I'll read it for you. It read, I believe that to have a friend, a man must be one, that all men are created equal, that everyone has within himself the power to make this a better world, that God put firewood there, but every man must gather it and light it himself. In being prepared physically, mentally and morally to fight when necessary for what is right, that a man should make the most of what equipment he has, that this government of the people, by the people and for the people shall live always, that men should live by the rule of what is best for the greatest number, that sooner or later, somewhere, somehow, we must settle with the world and make payment for what we have taken, that all things change but truth, and that truth alone lives on forever. in my Creator, my country, my fellow man. An interesting creed. I don't really believe in Unitarians don't tend to do creeds, although we do personal credos, to be fair. And this creed is definitely one of its time, hence the lack of certainly gender neutral language. It was a long time ago. Now it seems that the Lone Ranger operated very much within the spirit of Emersonian self-reliance. But he didn't operate alone. That's a misunderstanding of self-reliance. He asked for help when he needed it, and he got it. Self-reliance is one of those phrases that's been misunderstood and misinterpreted over the years. I know I've done so. Self-reliance is not about not caring for the needy and telling them that they must pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. It's also not about refusing to ask for help, relying purely on your own resources. When Ralph Waldo Emerson was describing it in his famous essay, Self-Reliance, as he left the Unitarian ministry and went off alone, he was not talking about the self-reliance that some economists talk of today. No, what he was describing was more akin to cultural and spiritual autonomy, and the need to know ourselves and listen to our own hearts, our own intuitions, and to use these gifts given to us by nature for the best purpose and not to use them lightly or selfishly. It's nicely portrayed actually in his thoughts on prayer that come towards the end of the essay Self-Reliance. Here he writes, "Prayer that craves a particular commodity, anything less than all good is vicious. Prayer is a contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. It is the soliloquy of a beholding and jubilant soul. But prayer as a means to effect a private end is a meanness and a theft." So just to pray for ourselves is not what he means in self-reliance at all. Self-reliance ought never be confused with selfishness. They are in no way similar, although they have been misinterpreted over the years and understood similarly. At least how Emerson understood self-reliance, of course. No one pulls themselves up from their bootstraps completely alone, all by themselves. From the moment of our births, others are involved in creating who we are and who we become. As the old saying goes, it takes a whole village to raise one child. No one lives entirely from themselves. We are all part of an interdependent web of relationships that are made of both visible and invisible strings that are physical and others metaphysical. Asking for help is actually a sign of both strength and wisdom, not weakness. It's a sign of good mental, emotional and spiritual health. But I have to be honest, hold up my hand. Asking for help is not something that comes easily to me. I am much more comfortable offering my hand than accepting that of another. That said, the moments of the greatest personal spiritual growth for me have been those moments of humility when I have felt powerless and completely lost and have had to surrender to this and held out my shaking hand in the hope that help would be available. The asking for help is a kind of prayer, if you like, but like all prayer, it must be followed by appropriate action. From the cradle to the grave, we need to keep on asking for help, and we need to make ourselves available to be of assistance to others in their time of need. This is not to say that we become unhealthily dependent on others and society as a whole. No, it doesn't mean that. But we are a part of a whole, a complex whole that makes life and community. As we grow and change and become the people that we are, this changes shape and it reforms constantly. It seems, in life we're being born again and again and again to new versions of ourselves. And of course we can't do this alone. Nobody can. We cannot give birth to ourselves for a start off. Who can? Think about it. We don't give birth to ourselves. How many free meals have you had? Think about all those ones you had as a child. Yes, we need help, and we need to ask for help from others, and in so doing we are of course doing not only a service for ourselves, but for them also. No one is an island. We are communal beings entirely dependent on each other and life itself. In the words of Martin Luther King, we are interdependent. All life is interrelated. We are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied into a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And we've seen the truth of that, aren't we, at the moment? When someone reaches out in a time of need, it is our God-given duty to help. And when we need help, we need to be faithful enough to ask for that help also. Interdependence is a physical fact, and it's a spiritual reality also. No one's an island. And to me, this is the whole point of spiritual community, of religious living, if you like. To see, understand and experience this oneness, this divine unity. To see that we're all one. To be of help to one another and to seek the help when it's needed. In this way we all grow and become the best that we can be and serve life to the utmost of our ability. So I say to you, echoing the creed of the Lone Rangers, let's recognise the power within ourselves to make this a better world. Let's gather the firewood that God has provided for us. Let's make the most of the equipment we have. Let's settle with the world and make payment for what we have taken. Hi-yo, Silver! Away! I'm not doing the music. Now instead I'm going to end with this devotion with a meditation from the Web of Life by Robert T. Weston. The web of life. There is a living web that runs through us to all the universe, linking us each with each and through all life onto distant stars. Each knows a little corner of the world and lives as if this were his all. We no more see the farther reaches of the threads than we see of the future, yet they're there. Touch but one thread, no matter which, the thoughtful eye may trace to distant lands its firm continuing strand, yet loose its filaments as they reach out, but find at last it coming back to him from whom it led. We move as in a fog, aware of self, but only dimly conscious of the rest, as they are close to us in sight or feeling. New objects loom up for a time, fade in and out. Then sometimes as we look on unawares, the fog lifts, and there's the web in shimmering beauty, reaching past all horizons. We catch our breath, stretch out our eager hands, and then in comes the fog again, and we go on, feeling a little foolish, doubting what we have seen. The hands were right. The web is real. Our folly is that we so soon forget. So I'm going to end this devotion as I always end, with a few words of blessing and a reminder that we need to bless more, that we can all bless, and we bless by giving our whole hearts to life. So let's begin now. Let's begin to give our whole hearts to life and become the blessing that our world's been crying out for, waiting for. Here are the final words of blessing. God of our hearts, bless us as we return to our lives. Be with us as we face the quandaries, fears and puzzles of the coming days. Send your peace amongst us and your peace throughout our troubled world. And may we carry the beauty of thy peace with us as we reach out our hands. And may we do so in all that we feel, in all that we think, in all that we say, in all that we do. Amen.